Fly, my minions, fly! Distant Star Revenant Fleet by Blazing Griffin is a real-time strategy game. Set in space, in the middle of some intergalactic war of unusual size. Anytime your fleet of 1 to 5 ships gets totally wiped out, you have to start over. Each run takes place in a randomly generated set of systems, so in a way, Distant Star pulls in some roguelite elements. In it, you play as a commander in the Ikari fleet who gets portrayed pretty much right off the bat. Despite this, you stick to your mission and head to blow up some ships of the faction that you're against and get some kind of magical space MacGuffin thing. To be honest, the plot's pretty paper thin, and it really just exists to give you a universe and some framework to play around in. It's a bit of flavor on top of the mini encounters that you can have throughout the star systems that you'll be exploring. At the beginning of each run, you're given a handful of credits and supply, then a chance to purchase and outfit your selection of ships. There are about 8 different ships that exist in game right now, not counting drones, and each one has its own functional focus. Some like to work all stealth-like and sneak up on enemies for massive damage, and others can send out buffs to your fleet, and some are just fucking gigantic and send out drones to do the dirty work for them. As you proceed through the game, you'll find different kinds of weapons and equipment for your ships, and it's really quite fun to experiment with different outfittings for each type to find interesting combinations. The supply that you get at the start of each run is important, as each warp to a new sector or area inside of a sector uses 1 supply, and any jumps made when you have no supply have a really high chance of resulting in critical damage to any of your ships. So far, I've had my weapons turn faulty and I've ended up blowing up my own ship. It's surprising how fast you run out of supply and how hard it can be to find. At times, it turns Distant Star into more of a survival game than an action game, and I feel like that's good for the overall flow of gameplay. It moves things from being about hunting down and fighting enemies to being about making as few jumps as possible so that you can hopefully survive. Apart from supply though, the game isn't very difficult at all on lower difficulties. I went in expecting regular to at least be a little challenging, but I only died when I made a jump without supply, got critical damage, and then later on went into combat and got blown up. If you play carefully and position yourself right, combat's pretty easy, so just, be careful. When you have enough supply to afford it, being able to adventure throughout the entirety of a system is really fun, though not always rewarding. Each area you jump to has a random event. Sometimes it'll be combat and sometimes it'll be trading. Different traders and combat scenarios exist throughout the universe, so it's best to be prepared. Not all of the traders will be useful for you either. There have been a few times that I'm low on credits and come across a ship trader, so it was basically a supply that didn't pay off. It does feel like a bit of a waste, but at the same time, it's just one of those things that made me sit back and go, well, I mean, I'm in space, I guess. All of the exposition and counter info, yada yada yada, is given to you through text boxes. It's a pretty dated system, but it works well considering the scope of Distant Star and the sheer number of encounters and dialogue options that exist. Having it voiced would just be too big of an undertaking for a game of this size. Each encounter gives you a number of dialogue options that direct you through the encounter. It doesn't feel like all of the options really change the encounter much, but it's still nice to see the flavors at least change for each scenario. And it's fun to use them to build up your commander's character as you play. Thankfully, you can save your run and exit the game at almost any time, unlike some games where you have to finish your run in a single sitting. This is great considering how long a single run of Distant Star can actually get. I think my best run so far had me at something like an hour and a half, and my shortest run has maybe been 30 minutes. It's just nice to be able to pull back and take a break for a bit and then pick it up whenever the hell I want to. Despite some minor issues, Distant Star Revenant Fleet is a fun RTS to play. Managing the small number of units is satisfying, and exploring the star systems that you find yourself in, while not always rewarding, is still a pretty enjoyable experience. You can pick it up for about $10 on Steam. If you like space RTS games or the exhilaration of permadeath, then this one's for you. That is it for this episode of Indie Bytes. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe for more. Be sure to send me any indie games you think I should check out either in the comments down below or on Twitter. My handle's @forkh. You can also shoot me an email. It's fork4h@gmail.com. I will see you next time. Bye!